successful people are closers. I know a lot of sales guys who are great at selling the product. Anyone in here in sales? Like do sales? You know, and they'll just like sell and sell and sell and sell and sell. And the buyer's kind of like, okay, how do I pay? He's like, well, here's some more features. And they just keep going because they cannot let go and say, okay, now it's at the point where it's up to the client to decide if they want to buy. Like, because at a certain point, you got to let go. You got to let go and let God. You know what I mean? And just hope it's on them. It's their decision. So that happens at every stage, every single stage. You're going to bump up against this reluctance to close. And it's only those who have the killer instinct, quote unquote, who actually want the result, who are going to get the result. I believe, and I've seen this, and again, over 20 years, I've seen that I'd say about 50% of students on the program, they don't want to close. What do they want? What do they want?
Validation.
They want to be able to say they got laid. Let's say that again. They don't want to get laid. You don't want to get laid. You want to be able to say you got laid. To yourself, to other people, to the world at large. You want to be like, I did it. I did it. I'm a good guy. I'm a worthwhile human being. And you might think, I'm not that guy, but there's a strong chance you are. There's a very, very strong chance that you are. Think about it. Have you ever been in a situation where like you could have pulled the trigger, but you made up some fucking excuse? I'm kind of tired. I'm going to go home. Oh, you know, I don't know. You know, she's just, one of her knees is bigger than the other. Mid. You know, you talk yourself out of it. I had a student in Scottsdale, and this guy's talking to this girl, and it's going very well. She's super into him. They start kissing, and all of a sudden he just comes back over to us. And I'm like, oh, cool, what happened? Did you get blown out? He's like, no. Like, it looked like it was going pretty well. He's like, yeah, it was. I'm like, why are you here? He goes, I needed to get my drink. I needed to get my drink? You see me almost have like a fucking aneurysm. Like, I'm like, I needed to get my drink? What is this, drink camp? I'm like, why are you here? He's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Because again, it's right there. It's right in his face, but he can't grab the brass ring, right? Because again, he's not a fucking closer. Look, it's like the same thing when you see people on the street and they're trying to open. And they just can't open. Or they go up and they just cannot open. And they'll get these very middling reactions. They'll like introduce themselves to people, and the person will kind of be like, huh? Yeah, anyway, and just walk by. Or as the person's walking, they try to get somebody to stop walking by, and they just cannot get somebody to stop. They can't do it because they don't want them to stop. You don't want them to stop. Because if they stopped, you'd be like, well, what the hell do I do now? It's like the dog that chases a car. What does it do if it catches the car? Just drag down the street by the bumper? It's like they just be like, I don't know what the fuck to do. So that's why they do these, what I call a half step. They're a fucking half stepper. They'll say like, hey, what's up? Hey, what's up? They'll say, I like your thing. Hey. Now the thing is, a guy that wants them to stop, I can say that. I can be like, hey, I like your thing. I like your fucking thing. They'll be like, oh, they can tell. There's going to be something sub-communicated in the way you're standing, the way you're looking at them, the tonality of your voice, that this person actually wants me to stop. And that's when they stop. When you want to get their phone number, that's when people give you your phone number. When you want them to become the client, that's when it happens. When you want them to go home with you, that's when it happens. So this is huge. This is probably the biggest fucking internal shift that you can make. That's going to make the most substantive difference in your results. You have to want it. So you got to ask yourself, why do I want it? Why? Right? Like Nietzsche said, the guy with a big enough why, you can accomplish any how.
How much do you think that comes from like self-image and shame about this whole issue?
Okay, let's get into that. That's actually an excellent point. Because if you don't understand, what he said was this. You want to repeat it? Just say it really loud.
So how much of this is based on shame and like the internal self-image that you hold of yourself as in you're not worthy of achieving certain results?
Right. So that is probably, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. I think one of the biggest reasons why people don't want to close is they feel that they're tricking the person. Right? You feel like this isn't a good idea for this person. It would not be a good idea for them to go home with me. It would not be a good idea for them to become my client because my product is bullshit. Maybe you have some like Dunning-Krueger, not, what's the opposite of Dunning-Krueger? Imposter syndrome. You know, maybe you do have a great product. Maybe you are a great guy, but you don't believe it. And so you're going to have difficulty selling that, closing, pulling the trigger. If you don't understand and this is big, if you don't understand very clearly what the value proposition is for the people you're talking to, they're not going to know. There's no way they can know. Like if you're selling the product, like if I'm up here and, you know, when I'm talking about boot camp or my mentoring, I sell that to the hilt. I can sell that to the hilt. Why?
Because you believe in it.
Because I've seen it. I've seen the results. I've even struggled with like imposter syndrome. Like, oh man, even after, you know, it's something, I think that people who are genuine and want to do well, you're always going to question. You know, in many ways, I'm going to be my biggest critic. I'm like, how can I make it better? Am I really serving these guys the best I can? Am I getting them the best results? That's why, I mean, I'm 48 years old. That's why during the week, all I do is like, make sure I drink 3 liters of fucking water with electrolytes and take all these supplements. Make sure I get 2 hours of cardio every fucking week. Make sure that I'm working out 4 days a week. Make sure that I'm sleeping 8 to 9 hours every fucking night. Like I'm like biohacking my shit into the ground. Why?
So you believe you're enough.
Well, no, so I can keep up with these fucking 22-year-olds on boot camp all weekend. And I had a kid come to me the other night. He's like 23. He's like, I'm tired. You're tired? I'm fucking 50 years old. When you're my age, you'll be like, I wish I was as tired as I was when I was 23. I wish. You know? So again, I treat this like an Olympic event. You know, this is more than a job to me. This is like a calling from heaven. You know, I was put on this planet for whatever fucking reason to do this, to help people figure this shit out. And again, that's why when I'm like, hey guys, okay, I'm running a boot camp this weekend. Anyone wants to join? And by the way, I am running one this weekend. I got 2 days left. If you wanted to come on the last 2 days, we had prorated out. So we'll put a pin in that. But the thing is, I'm able to sell these because I see the reason. You might not believe it. You might not believe in yourself. You might not believe in me, but I believe it because I see it every fucking weekend. I see guys who are like, I want to get a phone number. And then like at the end of it, they're just pulling off the street and going home and having a threesome. I had a guy lost his virginity on the program. He didn't even want to. It just turned out. It just happened. He met someone, they kidded off, and he's like, oh my God, I lost my V card. I'm like, really? Holy shit. You know, I see it every weekend. So I know that if the guy takes the program, I'm going to do my best to give 3 times the value of the program. That's always been my ethos. I want to give 3 times the value of the program. Where if they had to, at the end of it, they're like, if I paid 3 times what I did, I'd still be happy. So that's why I can sell it so strongly, because I believe it. Also, when I go up to some person on the street, you know, and I'm like, want to go home with some young lady, some old lady, whatever it is, some middle-aged lady, anything in between, I'll be like, I know for some, if I have chemistry with that person, it's going to be an amazing time for them. They're going to be like, this is amazing. They're going to be like, one comment that we get a lot, like when I'm out with my wings and stuff, is like, they're like, who the fuck are you guys? Because they've never met anyone like us, right? Because we're playing our personality to the fucking hilt. We're not like walking this tightrope of trying to pander to what we think other people might like. And then also we're very skilled at moving things forward. Like, again, we're very skilled at leading, moving things forward, being decisive and stuff like that. And they're just like, wow, this is a really unique experience. You know, additionally, I keep myself in shape so I can fuck better, quite honestly. Like, that's the main reason. So I know it's going to be a good experience. I'm pretty good at it at this point. I would hope so after all this banging. But like, you know, I know it's going to be a good experience for those who decide to go home with me. It's not going to be some bullshit. Meanwhile, you get somebody who's highly inexperienced, who maybe has very low self-esteem, and that's the key. What we're talking about here is self-esteem. You get somebody who has low self-esteem, they're not going to feel good about pulling, about closing the deal, because they think that they're tricking them. Right? They're like, maybe I can trick somebody. Maybe I can trick somebody to take my little bullshit program. Maybe I can trick somebody to go home with me. And they're like, I remember when I first started doing this, when I was like in my 20s, I started doing this when I was 25, 26. But, you know, I didn't have that strong sense of self. I didn't have that strong sense of the value proposition. I mean, I did the fake it till you make it, where I kind of invented this character that was good at it, and I kind of like leveraged that. That will get you, that will serve you very well in the initial stages, but you will quickly bump up against the limitations of that. So I developed that character, and it worked to an extent. However, I was always kind of afraid that the mask was going to slip. You know, that I'd get home, and I'd be like hooking up with somebody, and I'd be like, can't she see? Can't she see? It's like drawing ripped abs on a fat belly. You're always, it's like a facade that you're concerned is going to slip. So the question then becomes, how does one build self-esteem? How do you go about doing that?
Evidence.
Well, how do you collect the evidence? Well, yes, to an extent.
I think you have to know who you are.
That's actually really good. In fact, there's a man named Nathaniel Branden outlined this many years ago in the 60s. He was Ayn Rand's fuckboy. But number one, I believe he called it living consciously, having a certain degree of self-awareness. Most people, as Owens famously said many years ago, are going through life in a walking daze. They're just sort of reacting to things, very knee-jerk reactions. Honestly, the more that I learn about like how the brain works and stuff like that, the more I even question how much free will we even fucking have, or how much of it's like dictated just by brain chemistry. Like how much of what you do are you actually generating, and how much of it is just knee-jerk reaction to shit. It's a curious thing to think about. It's beyond my pay grade. But point being, you got to start examining what the fuck you're doing, right? So by doing that, that's the first step to developing self-esteem.